On this week's episode, has Robert Rodriguez found redemption with The Mandalorian? Can the Godfather coda fix the end of a historic trilogy? And is it time for Pat Sajak to spin his own Wheel of Fortune? All this and more as we once again delve into the pop culture cosmos. And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the Lakers Fast Break, and Game Source, it is truly appreciated. But it wouldn't be a Pop Culture Cosmos without my good friend. He is just joshing around at popculturecosmos.com. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing there, and also his great shows, Topicocalypse and the Super BS Gamescast, plus his awesome book, which is still a great holiday gift. There's still time to get it. Congratulations, You Suck. Available now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. Gutting it out, man.
Hey, my voice is leaving me, but I'm here also. Also, I want to congratulate you on your Wheel of Fortune pun. That was actually really funny. So well done.
There you go. I appreciate it, my friend. I appreciate it. I do want to let everyone know, I want to give a big special thank you to the folks at PodVcom. They played an episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos with Josh and I last night as part of their convention. So we truly appreciate them doing that. It was one of our better episodes of recent times. So hopefully everyone out there at PodVcom that supports it gets a chance to go ahead and check that out. Plus, again, I do want to go ahead and thank everyone that allowed us to be a part of Indie Pods United. It was a great convention. Marcus and I had a great time doing what we did there. And also the fact I got a chance to go and be not only on 1, 2, but 3 panels. It's all available on archives. So you want to check it out today, you can go ahead and do so at indiepodsunited.com and find out more information there. But in fact, today's guest, Sean Dustin from the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. He's going to stop on by to talk about his experience at Indie Pods United, making some more pop culture stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to him on that. We're also going to be talking about some great things, including Oscar Isaac playing Snake in the Metal Gear Solid movie. He just announced by Sony. So we're going to talk about how much of a fit or how good of a fit, because I've already been asked about that already. So we'll talk about that. Amazon top sellers for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Some interesting things popped up. So I want to hit that up with Josh today. The Godfather coda, the death of Michael Corleone, a kind of reimagining, so to speak, kind of a little bit of things are tweaked on it, maybe extra added footage in there, things of that nature, to Godfather 3. Will this help, I guess, bring about the great history of the Godfather series, this trilogy that everybody seems to think is great for Godfather 1 and 2, but 3 kind of fell off a cliff? We'll see if this reimagining of the Godfather Part 3 will go ahead and help restore the greatness of this awesome film trilogy. We're also going to talk about the Game Awards real quick as far as run down our thoughts on who will win Game of the Year. Cyberpunk 2077 hit store shelves this week, so we're going to talk quickly about that as well. And Pat Sajak. He's been a little testy out there to some of the contestants. So we're going to ask if it's time for Pat Sajak to possibly think about other options than hosting the Wheel of Fortune coming up as well. But my friend, it all starts, including, I also want to go ahead and say we're going to be talking about some BioWare and Naughty Dog shakeups as well, real quick on that. So before we go ahead and get into the main story, in fact, I want to go ahead and touch on it right now. BioWare just announced that one of the big wigs of, and probably one of the guys that's mainly responsible for the series that's right behind me, Mass Effect, and also Dragon Age, Casey Hudson, for the second time is leaving BioWare, along with one of the main producers for the upcoming Dragon Age game. That's Mark Dara. He's also exited the studio. What does that say about what's going on with BioWare right now? Because Casey Hudson leaving the project or projects that he's most well known for at a critical time is not a good sign for EA and BioWare.
Well, sorry. Well, if you read the press release that he gave out, he doesn't really sound like he has a direction. He just kind of sounds like he's moving on to something. It doesn't even sound like it's something specific. It just sounds like he's moving on, doesn't know what he's moving on to. So it makes me kind of wonder if he was he forced out, or is this a decision he made on his own?
Something he's not happy with as far as the direction of the games that are on there. I'm kind of concerned about that. I mean, when that hit dropped earlier this week, as everyone knows out there, on November 7th, they announced at BioWare that they're coming out with a remastering of the Mass Effect trilogy and a new Mass Effect on the way in 2-3 years down the line. Plus, Dragon Age is supposed to be scheduled maybe for late 2021, early 2022 release. That is concerning to me. That set up boo, 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 right there for you. That set up alarms for me. So I'm concerned about that. Does this concern you, my friend?
Well, with Dragon Age, they keep talking about how, it's well into development. It'll be released soon. And they've had so many opportunities to show us gameplay footage or at least give us updates on the game. And they have repeatedly failed to do so at every obstacle. And, just from what I'm hearing, between Casey Hudson leaving and the who was the other person?
Mark Dara, who's a producer for the Dragon Age, a part of it.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they're removing the old guard and bringing in somebody new, and makes me also think that wasn't that the problem with Mass Effect Andromeda?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they gave it to an inexperienced crew. They had it with an experienced crew, then quickly changed it over to an inexperienced crew so that the experienced crew could work on, I think it was Battlefront at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. They're really trying to do it. EA and BioWare, they're really trying to undo themselves at this point in time. I'm very shaky at this point in time about what's going on. I'm very nervous. So I've got a lot of nervous feelings about that. Yeah. I mean, I don't you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is a big risk because it's kind of their second chance is coming right here, and they're already fumbling it right at the beginning of it. So, this could be either they're very confident in what they're doing moving forward, or, there's going to be Mass Effect Andromeda all over again.
Oh, so I'm very nervous about that. I also wanted to mention with Naughty Dog, also one of my favorite studios, because I've got right over here, Nathan Drake standing by right here at this standee. I wanted to ask you real quick on this Neil Druckmann, who was somebody we were kind of, I guess, when the fallout of Amy Hennig, who was one of the creators and one of the masterminds behind the Uncharted series, when she left, I don't know if she got forced out or just was very dissatisfied. There was a falling out at Naughty Dog when she left. It was plain and clear to see. Neil Druckmann was one of the individuals, and one of the individuals that took over the Uncharted franchise. He was most known for The Last of Us, so he took over Uncharted 4. It still was a great success. Obviously, it was a very good game. It's not my favorite of the Uncharted series, but it still was an excellent game. So beautiful to be a part of when you're in there, and it really so beautiful to look at. And it really expanded the PlayStation 4 as far as from a graphics sense, and obviously told a very good story as well. He has been promoted to co-president, so he's going to be the big head honcho as far as the direction for Naughty Dog going forward. What are your thoughts on Neil Druckmann getting the head seat, a co-presidency per se, for Naughty Dog going forward? It looks like something where, I don't know if it was political, he was forced his way through in there, or if it's just the fact that he works really hard and has done a really great job. With The Last of Us 2, and Uncharted 4, he's done an outstanding job. So at least we got to go ahead and give him props for getting there based on the merit of his video games.
Yeah, I mean, he's made a lot of good stuff. With this, though, it makes me wonder, he is being promoted to a more managerial position instead of someone who really has his hands in the games. And with that said, what's what's going to happen with some of these existing franchises. Are they going to be bringing in new people, or is he going to double dip, so to speak?
Well, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see what the direction is for Naughty Dog going forward with him. Basically, he had a lot of power there. He had a lot of power there anyways, but this is going to expand it even further. So I'm very curious to see where it goes from there. Obviously, everybody is thinking that not only will be there Last of Us 3, because that initially sold extremely well, despite all the controversies that were around it, and it's being nominated for a Game Award, so it's being very well thought of from a critical standpoint. I know there was a lot of divisiveness amongst the gaming community on it, but still, it's a great representation of a video game, in my opinion. Even though the way the narrative was laid out there were some things there that people didn't like. People were sad as far as the real shocker upon all shockers that happens in it. There's a spoiler there. I'm not going to go ahead and spoil it for people if you haven't played it yet, but I will say that he's done an excellent job of driving the Last of Us series and now the Uncharted series. There's supposedly a new IP that they're working on, but also expanding upon the other two original series with The Last of Us Part 3. I'm assuming that's going to come along the way at, 2-3 years down the line. And then, of course, Uncharted 5 with the daughter of Nathan and Elena, I'm assuming taking over that role and maybe expanding that type of becoming even a better version of the Uncharted series, hopefully down the line as well. I'm looking for maybe even in the same vein as a Lara Croft maybe going ahead about that with the new Uncharted. So I see their daughter, the daughter of Nathan and Elena Drake, really expanding that game, because if you played Uncharted 4, the ending leads into their maturation, but also the daughter's curiosity, and you can see the growth from there. So you see something as far as that's concerned going forward for Uncharted 5. But it's very interesting to see all these movements behind the scenes at these two major game studios. So we want to hear your thoughts on this. What are your thoughts? So we want to hear your thoughts on the actions with BioWare and Naughty Dog. Are you more concerned or more confident in their games going forward with Naughty Dog and also as well BioWare? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, the top story is this week The Mandalorian, and I've got Baby Yoda. No, I'm not going to call him Grogu. I like Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda, again, his series is the top deal this week because in many ways people are talking about this episode, and it's a shorter episode. In fact, it's the shortest in the series. But still, by many people out there, it's considered one of the best, if not the best in series. And I think it is right there among the best, and might actually be my favorite. I might have to see it again just to decide that for sure. But it's an excellent episode. It definitely does create that scenario. I mean, to me, it's a lot like Star Trek, like an old classic Star Trek episode, the way it was built, the way it was structured. I know they were limited because they were already, I think at that time, COVID was already, the restrictions were there in place. So it feels very centered, very confined to a certain couple areas, but still they use that very wisely. And like I said, I felt like to me an old, original Star Trek episode. So I want to hear your thoughts, Josh. The man who directed this was none other than Robert Rodriguez. With their all-star directors list, it was his turn to direct this. And I had remarked in the first episode ever of The Mandalorian, I thought that episode was too short and needed to be fleshed out. But the great thing about The Mandalorian is they're allowing the directors to go ahead and decide how long or short they want these episodes. And in this case, I thought shorter was better because it did a great job there. I want to hear your thoughts, though, on Robert Rodriguez himself. His career, I don't want to say it was in a state of flux, but Alita Battle Angel, people are still deciding whether or not that was a good movie, whether or not it was a great movie. Was it a hit? Was it not a hit? Beforehand, Robert Rodriguez did not have, let's say his career was not going in the greatest direction as far as the number of movies that he was making in this past decade, as opposed to his great success in the previous decades. Sin City, El Mariachi, there's just so many other great films that he was, earlier in his career. I want to hear your thoughts on what this could do to boost Robert Rodriguez, status within the directorial community, because I think he's always been a very good director. I just think he's not always been given and dealt the best hand when it comes to projects. So I'm glad that The Mandalorian is finally redeeming his quality as a director going forward.
Well, if you think about it, The Mandalorian is kind of like the perfect the perfect thing for him, because he is someone who is used to telling these noir style stories. Like, look at Sin City, look at El Mariachi, look at Desperado. I guess Alita Battle Angel is kind of weird for him because it was a big budget film. He also did Predator, which was really good, or at least like I liked it. But he's someone who he makes movies that you don't really see a lot anymore, like the over the top violence, the nonstop action. Like, he makes those type of films, and The Mandalorian is actually like the perfect chance for him to kind of display his talents. What this will do for him going forward, I don't know, but I would hope that this would kind of revitalize an interest in those types of stories, because there's a lot of those movies done in the 90s and early 2000s, and they were hit and miss. It's a genre of film that just doesn't really get touched anymore.
Absolutely. I just had that feeling. I mean, when you watch it, Josh, I know you're not as familiar with the Star Trek universe, but it reminds me so much of a classic Star Trek episode, where you could tell so much of a story and expand so much of a story, even though you're not given a whole bunch of space, whether it's due to production limitations, whether it's due to monetary limitations. In this case, I'm assuming it was because of coronavirus limitations, but they weren't given a whole bunch of space. You could tell they were, well, okay, I'll let you see the episode. I don't want to go ahead and spoil it for you on that, but what happens to it, something very tragic, because the episode's entitled The Tragedy. Tragic happened, actually more than one thing, actually. So when you watch it, you're going to understand possibly what I'm talking about when it has that Star Trek, original classic Star Trek episode type feel, whether it's in this confined space, but they were still able to expand and tell this type of story. Plus the fact that it's redeeming. And even though it's that short of an episode, it does redeem a major character in the Star Wars universe. And I hope you get a chance to catch up on The Mandalorian real soon, because this year is more even flow. Last year, it was like there were real high highs and there were real low lows. You and I talked about this. I mean, the Tatooine episode alone was just like almost turning me off. The initial episode, really didn't draw me in, but there were some real high highs in those episodes. And by the end, it really got me hooked. This year, so much of it has been like a Western. Okay, this is his adventure for this week. This is his adventure for this week. This is his adventure for this week. But they're so entertaining, these adventures, and they're so well crafted. I've had just a great time watching The Mandalorian throughout this year. It's been more of an even keel, and this tops it all, because I think it is. I'm going to have to, like I said, see one more episode, see it again just to make sure. But this is one of the best episodes that they've ever done, if not the best. So before we go ahead and hit the break, my friend, I just wanted to get your thoughts one last time on what this could do for Robert Rodriguez as far as reinstating him, because all the surprises, all the things that were put in there in this truncated episode, it was short, but it was very sweet.
Yeah, well, I mean, if this episode is as good as you say it is, which I need to watch it. If you think about it, the small screen is kind of the perfect place for Robert Rodriguez. It's a chance for them to tell short, gritty stories, and that's what he does best. So, I mean, if we see him in, if we don't see him in another Mandalorian episode, I'd hope to see him in maybe like an episode of Westworld or Raised by Wolves, or even see him on Netflix doing something would be real cool. I'm still holding out hope for an Alita Battle Angel 2, but I definitely think that he's talented. He just needs to be put in an arena that he's comfortable with, whether that's like another Predator film or an Alien film, or even moving on to a horror movie like a remake of some of the old John Carpenter films. Like, that could be a place where he really excels. But I mean, if you look at the modern culture of film, there hasn't really been anything that's done in that like gritty nor action style that he is known for. And I sometimes wonder if that, I mean, at least in a long time. So I wonder too if that's maybe one of the reasons that people didn't go to see Alita Battle Angel, or maybe they didn't like it, was because they didn't like the way it was directed. But I think that he's still got a lot left in the tank. He just needs the right projects.
You never know, my friend. I'm going to throw this out there. How about, speaking of Mass Effect, how about Mass Effect, a series? Maybe making it a series instead of just a movie, making it an entire series, because there's now a whole universe you can draw from.
Yeah, well, it's funny, as you're about to say that, I was thinking Halo in my head.
We're working on the Showtime series. That's a good possibility.
I mean, like he does. I mean, if you look at his work on Predator, he does really well in these sci-fi universes. So, maybe that could be a place he could go next.
Who knows? Who knows indeed. But he is coming off the success of the latest episode of The Mandalorian, one of the most well thought of, if not the most well thought of episode in the entire series. Mind you, it hasn't gone that far yet, but still, it's Disney Plus's most successful series. And when you direct what many consider to be the best episode in the series, that could really kickstart once again the great career of Robert Rodriguez, to get him back in that upper echelon of directors once again. What are your thoughts on the latest episode of The Mandalorian? I've seen it, so you can tell me all the spoilers in the comments, or you can tell me all the spoilers if you go ahead and send me out some love at popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, or you can go ahead and hit us up on anything social media like at popculturecosmos as well. We're heading to the break right now, but we're coming back with more right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald, along with my good friend, Mr. Josh, just joshing around Peterson. Before we hit the half-hour break, my friend, and our guest, Sean Dustin from the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, I wanted to go ahead and hit you up with this real quick. We're going to go rapid fire. Amazon top sellers for Black Friday. Of course, there was a lot to concern, with the top sellers there. A lot of consumer electronics are going to go flying off the shelves when it comes to that. But I want to hear your thoughts on this, my friend. While there was a lot, and I'm showing people on Facebook Live right now, hair dryers, hot air brushes, iRobots. I mean, these portable vacuums were just really going all over the place. The Amazon Fire Stick, which I bought a new one. I bought the updated one. So I now have the updated one because they came out with one earlier in 2020, and it was a big seller, going for $18 on Amazon and Black Friday. So that was a great deal. Couldn't pass that up. That was one of their big sellers. But the Nintendo Switch was one of the major sellers. The bundle that was there, whether it was the Fortnite bundle or the Mario Kart 8 bundle, that bundle sold extremely well and was one of the top sellers. How does that strike you for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, with Nintendo Switch being one of the top sellers?
How much were they selling it?
It was
for?
$299, and I think they were also giving 3 months of their live service as well packed in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a feeling that the Switch was going to be like a heavy hitter this holiday season. I know like GameStop was giving away pint glasses if you bought a Switch, and I think Target had a couple like game packages going on. So, it doesn't surprise me that would be the big game, especially with all the. If you notice, last year, the Switch did not have a lot going on Black Friday, right? Not a lot of games being discounted, very few, really nothing. Like they had some accessories, but this time around, like I just keep getting emails from GameStop every day, and it's annoying. But Black Friday, Cyber Monday, whatever it is, these games you can find them at least $20 off. So I mean, it's been, with all those deals going on, it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people bought Switches.
It's funny too, as well. I mean, you've got Nintendo Switch out there. I think a lot of people got frustrated in their lack of success in getting PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. So as a gift, if they're giving gifts, they decided, you know what, I'm just going to go and spend $300 and drop it on a Nintendo Switch instead.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, this might be a better topic for another episode, but all these scalpers are starting to get called out for doing what they're doing. You know, all these they're companies basically that have been buying up all these things and selling them, like StockX and places like that. Like, they're starting to get a lot of flack on the internet. So
I know Eurogamer had reported on in Europe one being stopped that it was
yeah,
responsible for buying thousands of PlayStation 5s. So we reported that on the PCC Multiverse on Friday. So
yeah,
definitely agree with you on that. So it's going to be freeing up as far as PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, but it is going to take a little more time. But I'm saying early 2021, there should be more and more chances and opportunities to go ahead and buy those consoles. But for now, as gifts, I thought Nintendo Switch certainly took advantage of it with one more major push. I think they have more years for the Nintendo Switch on it.
For sure, yeah. Especially if like these rumors are true of Pokemon Gold and Silver being remastered or redone, and there's more Zelda games, Breath of the Wild 2 coming out. There are rumors of Mario Odyssey 2. So I'm sure like 2021, we're going to see a lot of big things coming out for Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of the not so surprising bestsellers from Amazon over the course of Black Friday and also Cyber Monday. And then again, I said like iRobot, the portable vacuum that you can go ahead, the remote control vacuum that just goes off by itself and does its own thing. That was pretty popular because there's several different kinds, several different makes, but iRobot is most popular and the kind of reductions on it. We also mentioned as far as some hairstyling things, but one of the most interesting things, my friend, that was a top seller for Amazon Black Friday and Cyber Monday were two different things from our childhood. Connect 4, the board game, and Light Bright. Did you ever think in our adult lives, outside of maybe buying a gift for a very young one, that we would say that in our, I guess, at all, period, that Light Bright would enter our lives once again? You're on mute.
Yeah, it's funny to see all these things coming back around. I was at Walmart and I actually saw they had an end cap that had Pretty Princess on it. And they're also reselling Easy Bake ovens. So yeah, I mean it's weird how everything is so cyclical, you know, it all comes back around. And with Light Bright is actually a really fun game. It's really great actually. And I'm curious, like, if we're gonna start seeing like the rebirth of like Skip-Its and Bop-Its and all kinds of stuff like that. That would be real neat. And
I'm just putting my Light Brights together right now.
And part of me wonders too if it has anything to do with just not a lot of new products coming out, and whether it has anything to do with COVID or not. Just not a lot of new patents being issued for new toys.
Oh, there you go. Josh has probably got, if he off camera, he's probably got a whole lineup, a whole wall full of Light Brights right there for you. But Light Bright and Connect 4 were two of the major sellers of Amazon's Black Friday and Cyber Monday. So I'm telling you what, there's a lot to talk about there when it concerns what is selling right now in consumer products. It's very interesting to see, but we want to hear your thoughts about all these different types of varied selling products during the course of Amazon's Black Friday and Cyber Monday period. And I'm assuming with all the other major retailers, whether it's online or in-store, those products were moving just as fast, if not more. So we want to hear your thoughts on all these different products, including Connect 4 and Light Bright. Were you surprised when I told you, or when you heard that they were two of the major products to move on Cyber Monday and Black Friday? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, board games, I'm just going to say, board games as a whole probably moved very well during the course of the holidays. In fact, they probably moved very well over the past few months due to COVID. I know we bought the Mandalorian board game, so I'm looking forward to playing that. So I think that I'm not too surprised on Connect 4, but the Light Bright just took me back. That really just surprised the heck out of me.
It's funny, if you go to a lot of restaurants or breweries or whatever that have outdoor patio areas, you always see like the giant Connect 4, you'll see like the giant Jenga. So I mean, there definitely is still a market for nostalgia.
Apparently there is, my friend. Apparently there is. But before we head on out, my friend, to the half-hour break, and Sean Dustin from the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast I want to hit you up on this. Oscar Isaac has been very busy. He's going to be appearing on Dune, in the movie Dune, coming up later in 2021. That's going to be heading day and date to HBO Max, which I know Marcus and I were very excited for, which we announced all those Warner Brothers titles, including Space Jam 2, Godzilla versus Kong. A whole bunch of movies are going to be coming day and date now with HBO Max, and at the same time it's being released in theaters. Just awesome to hear. One of those movies, like I said, is Dune, with Oscar Isaac appearing in the movie. He's also going to be in Marvel's Moon Knight, the television series, and now going forward, going to be part of the MCU. But Sony said, hey, Oscar, would you mind go ahead and playing Snake in the upcoming Metal Gear Solid movie? So I want to hear your thoughts of Oscar Isaac for you would be a good Snake for Metal Gear Solid.
You know, it's funny. I always heard rumors of them making that movie, but I always I could never think of who would play that part real well. Originally, I was like, maybe Kurt Russell, because of his.
He's already done a Snake.
Right. His Big Trouble in Little Chinatown look that he has. But then as soon as I heard Oscar Isaac, I could immediately picture him in the spy gear with the graying hair. I think that would be a really great choice for Solid Snake, especially, Oscar Isaac is somebody who is heavily involved in pop culture, and he's someone who does his research. So I imagine he would be the kind of person that would go and play the games. He'd go and read the books or whatever, just to kind of get into that, into the role. So I think that he is a great choice, and this is a great time for him because, much like Nicolas Cage had his renaissance, we're seeing this big rise in Oscar Isaac, and I'm really excited to see what he does going forward.
I am as well. It's going to be interesting to see how Oscar Isaac's portrayal of Snake in the upcoming Metal Gear Solid movie. It's not, obviously, they've not even started production on it, so it's going to be a while before it comes out, but it's very interesting to see how that goes. But I am very much in approval for Oscar Isaac as Snake. What are your thoughts out there? Do you think Oscar Isaac would make a good Snake for the upcoming Metal Gear Solid movie coming up at some point in time down the road for Sony? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, coming up next, right after the break, we've got Sean Dustin from the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. That's from the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. He's going to stop by and talk about his experience working on the Indie Pods United convention. And hopefully we can talk some pop culture while we're there as well. And then coming up after the break, The Godfather Coda, Cyberpunk 2077, the Game Awards, and is it time for Pat Sajak to say, you know what? It's time for me to spin my own wheel off the Wheel of Fortune. We'll talk about that coming up in a sec. This is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here. I want to thank Sean Dustin from the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast for stopping by and sharing his thoughts on Indie Pods United. And also as well, thank everyone once again for being part of the Indie Pods United convention. Hopefully you will be able to attend next year at 2021. And always, if you want to go ahead and find out more information, stop by indiepodsunited.com. But before we head on out, my friend, I wanted to go ahead and hit you up on 4 last things. The first thing is The Godfather Coda, the death of Michael Corleone. I guess it's a reimagining of the Godfather 3. I guess Francis Ford Coppola did not exactly kind of dig the way how the Godfather Part 3 ended up being. So he did a George Lucas and went back and kind of made some tweaks and whatnot. A lot of the stars are saying that they enjoy this reimagining. A lot of the critics out there are saying it's better, but it's not at the level where it needs to be. There's still a lot left there on the table that they could have done or could have fixed, what have you. So it's getting okay reviews, pretty much. I want to hear your thoughts on this. The Godfather series is, I guess, it was talked about for a long time as being one of the greatest trilogies ever for film. And in the wake of all these franchises and whatnot, it's kind of lost its luster a little bit, but it should not be discounted because Godfather 1 and 2 are two of the best films of its era. So I want to hear your thoughts on how The Godfather Coda, the death of Michael Corleone, can actually reignite people's love or people's interest in the Godfather series.
I wasn't Godfather Part 3 like the one that people liked the least out of that
Yes,
whole
but and it's not even close. It is not even close.
Okay, yeah. So, I don't know. Like I watched The Godfather because I had to watch it for a class. So I watched the whole trilogy and it was okay. But I mean, if you're trying to get a modern audience enthused about The Godfather, the only there's two possible ways you could do that. One, you could do like a big documentary on how the film was made, or two, you could just remake it. And I don't know if that's something that people will be willing to do. As for people who are film, aficionados, people who are enthusiasts, I think that this is a great way to get them re-interested in the series. But as it goes, a younger audience probably is not going to find this one very interesting. But did you watch it, or do you have any interest in watching it?
I really don't have much of an interest in revisiting it, not because of the length, because there was a time where a movie like that, oh, it's so long. But now there's so many movies that are 2.5 hours, closing in on 3 that we've seen now. We've kind of been more a little bit accustomed. And now that we're a lot more home and we don't have to see films out in the big screen as much because of what's going on with COVID, we're more apt to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and crash on the couch for 3 hours and I can check this out. I may go into it. I don't know. I just would have to go ahead and see Godfather 1 and 2 over again. I think they're very good films, 1 and 2. I think they're great films, perhaps, especially the second one. But I'm not exactly on the they're the greatest films of all time fence for me. I think I've seen better from that era, and I've seen better overall since then, but not much better. I'm just saying that they were very, very good films for me, but I'm not endeared to the Godfather series, I should say. So I probably will check it out at some point, but I'm not in a rush to see it right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like films like Alien or American Graffiti, even what was it? THX was the one that George Lucas did. All these films, while great films, and they were staples of the era they came out in. I myself never find myself wanting to go back and watch these movies, but I will continually talk about how great they are and say like, hey, if you're a fan of just film in general, this is something you need to watch. But, if I'm trying to find something like, hey, it's a rainy day or I'm sick, what do I want to watch? I probably would never go back to a film like that.
2001: A Space Odyssey. Let's give that as, for instance. I think it's easy for me to say it's one of the greatest sci-fi films of all time because I'm a little bit older. But for you, someone that's younger, or to someone that's say just entering their early 20s, that says, "Oh, I like these sci-fi films," and I go say, "Okay, Blade Runner, or 2001: A Space Odyssey, or even Star Wars, the original Star Wars, which is now look a little dated." I mean, anybody that doesn't tell me that has got to be kidding themselves. I mean, no, you can spruce it up all you want, George Lucas, but there are some parts of it that still look a little dated that someone in their early 20s can't say, is going to say, you know what, how do you even like these? They're so old. So it's hard now to relate, and hard to express that these older movies get the kind of love that they actually deserve. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, my mouse isn't working. And yeah, I mean, and that's a big shame too, because there's a lot of stuff that was really good that will just never get made again. We're talking about Robert Rodriguez, for example, like El Mariachi, Desperado, Once Upon a Time in Mexico was kind of awful, but those movies like that from Dusk Till Dawn, like stuff of that style, of that type of like genre, I guess.
That was so fresh at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And in 2000, the late 2000s here, or sorry, 2020s, that just won't happen again, unless there's some like big renaissance of films of that style coming out. Like right now, we're still either at the tail end or somewhere in the midst of the era of the superhero or the era of the art house film or the era of the horror movie remakes. Like we're just not getting, it had its time and place, and unless it's part of this like everything cyclical movement, I just don't think we're going to see movies like those ever again.
What are your thoughts out there on The Godfather Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone coming back? Does this gain a new interest for you because of this reimagining of The Godfather Part 3? Does this give you new interest and new sort of curiosity if you haven't watched it, or if you haven't watched it for a long time, the entire Godfather saga? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, last three things to hit on real quick. Cyberpunk 2077 this week. Looking forward to it. I want to hear your thoughts on this, my friend. Cyberpunk 27 is supposed to be one of the major game releases of 2020, and it's going to be a staple if it does well, similar to what The Witcher 3 did for quite some time, where it had that GTA type resonance, where it was not just only popular and interesting for 1 year, but multiple years. And in fact, The Witcher 3 still has held pretty good value for a game that's been out several years now. So I want to hear your thoughts. That is the ceiling for this game, that it can consistently be a game that people will go back to year in, year out. So I want to hear your thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077, because we could be on the verge of a major game release or possibly a major game failure as well.
With Cyberpunk, it's funny because, I've been talking to a lot of people who are really excited about it, and they've all of a sudden become very like pessimistic, because they're like, I really want to play this game. It sounds awesome. But then I look at the world, like they play video games for escape, and they look at the world that Cyberpunk takes place in, and it's not really an escape, right? Because it's so dark. It kind of is reminiscent of what we have going on today. So they're like, I really hope that this game pulls me in and like makes me forget about things, but they're also concerned that it's going to make them, think about our own circumstances. And it's just funny to see how like quick that coin flipped,
Absolutely. People were really high on it when it was announced.
Right. And so, I mean, and back to your point with this possibly being the biggest game release, of the past several years, like I'm excited to play it. I do want to play it. I'm still playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but I'm hoping to sit down and find some time to do Cyberpunk over the next few weeks. But this is also like, what if the game is bad? What if it's like it's got so much resting on its shoulders and so many people depending on it that if it has like one bad review, it could very well like be detrimental to the game.
We'll talk about that more coming up on the PC Multiverse. I'm hoping I can also do a game preview, a game source preview per se, coming up in the middle of the week on Cyberpunk 2077. And of course, we'll get the early responses critically and also from a popularity standpoint. We'll see what the interest is coming up either on the PC Multiverse on Friday or when Josh and I reconvene here next week. What are your thoughts out there on Cyberpunk 2077? Are you excited to go ahead and enter the world of Cyberpunk 2077 and hopefully meeting up with Keanu Reeves while you're there? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, before we head on out, two last things. The Game Awards, my friend, is this week as well. Jeff Keighley, your friend and mine. Ha, 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 ha. You know what? I do give him a lot of smack from time to time, but I will give him props on trying to go ahead and create this for the gaming community, because this is sorely needed for the gaming community, and that is the Game Awards. So I want to hear your thoughts on basically the game of the year. All the rest, game direction, graphics, action game, all that's great. But everybody looks towards the Game Awards, the game of the year, as being the marquee, and then also the trailers of upcoming games that they also release. So hopefully they'll be big coming out. Looking forward to that. I want to hear your thoughts, though, on the Game Awards game of the year with Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, again, you and I have talked about, and also Marcus and I have talked about, I don't think should qualify as a game of the year. I think it should be in its own category because it is a great remake, but it is still a remake. Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and The Last of Us Part 2. So I want to hear your thoughts, my friend, before we head on out on who you think will win the Game of the Year at the Game Awards.
So normally, I know we talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and like this is the first time I think in recent history where a remake has actually made it into a nomination for Game of the Year. But I don't think that that's going to win. My other thing I was going to say, I think The Last of Us Part 2 has like a pretty good chance of winning. But then like I started to think about Animal Crossing, right? I started to think about
So does my daughter, by the way, because she just bought it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it's a very like I don't know. A lot of people are into it. It's a very accessible game, and I think about how it came out like right at the beginning of all the COVID stuff, and you could go on for weeks after that game came out and see all these people posting about this game. This is what I'm doing in quarantine. Like you could not, if you went to the store on any given day looking for this game while you're out buying toilet paper, you would not be able to find it. So I think just because of its merits in times of COVID, that Animal Crossing also has a pretty good shot at winning. So I'm going to do a twofer, and I'm going to say either Animal Crossing or The Last of Us Part 2. And The Last of Us Part 2, for obvious reasons, but I do really like Ghost of Tsushima, but I don't think that it's going to make the cut.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball on you. I think Hades might be the Game of the Year, or Ghost of Tsushima. I think one of those two. They seem like Jeff Keighley type games. I mean, I know Jeff Keighley is only part of the process in deciding this award, but I just feel that the Ghost of Tsushima is kind of like the game that people would lean towards to. Animal Crossing obviously has been very addictive to a lot of people and obviously deserves its praise. The Last of Us Part 2, a critically just loved hit by the critics, a beloved hit by the critics, but it's very divisive amongst the gaming community for a lot of different reasons, which we've gone into on several occasions on the show. I think that or Hades. Hades has just been this type of game. It's this type of Diablo-esque type game that just goes under the radar for a lot of people, but seems to be this like really cult favorite. And I've heard no one say any bad things about this game. So I'm thinking Hades would be the type of game that, we want to go ahead and give this a higher profile. So let's go ahead and give that the award. I wouldn't be surprised there, or Ghost of Tsushima. I just think that those two might fall in line with more from what I've seen in the past on what games do get the most love from the Game Awards.
Yeah, Hades is like the the hit that nobody saw coming. And I hope you're right. But it seems like Last of Us Part 2 is probably like has the biggest shot at winning here.
What are your thoughts out there on who will win the top game for the Game Awards? Share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, before we head on out, Pat Sajak has been in the news recently, and it's been for kind of different reasons. I know the loss of Alex Trebek has hit the game show community extremely hard. I mean, him being the benchmark and standby for everything, Jeopardy has been kind of, gut-wrenching, the fact that we are no longer going to see Alex Trebek a part of our lives. I know that they're rebooting, or they're going to return Jeopardy to the airwaves coming in January with Ken Jennings and some other hosts that are going to be stepping in from time to time. But with the Wheel of Fortune, the reason why I'm saying that there's a lot more eyes focused on it, maybe because right now what's going on with Jeopardy, there's a lot more eyes focused on what's going on with Jeopardy. And Pat Sajak in recent weeks or recent episodes, now mind you, they tape all these in bunches, so who knows when this actually happened, but in recent episodes that they've aired, he's been a little testy to not one, but more. On more than one occasion, he's been testy to contestants. So much so that it's kind of gone through the news wire. I know he's been doing this a long time. I remember him when he was just the weatherman at the local Los Angeles NBC station. and he was doing this as a part-time gig. I want to hear your thoughts on Pat Sajak and the Wheel of Fortune. I mean, I don't want to say he should leave the Wheel of Fortune, but should maybe someone in 2020 reach out to him and say, you know what, being testy to your contestants time in, time out is not a good look. Maybe in order to keep the people coming in watching Wheel of Fortune in cancel culture 2020, maybe you should go ahead and just be a little bit more, I guess, I don't want to say friendly to these contestants, but maybe a little bit more accepting, maybe a little bit more patient with these contestants and some of the things they say and do on the show.
Yeah, so Wheel of Fortune is a show that like I always grew up with. I didn't always watch Jeopardy, but every night faithfully I would watch Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, with Pat Sajak, Vanna White, right, was the lady's name that did the
Still
so
there.
yeah, she's still there. So I always I looked at this guy and I was always like I was a huge fan, always admired him. That being said, yeah, I mean look at how long he's been on the air. Look at how, not to excuse his behavior, but look at how many years he's been doing this. And then like in the midst of what happened with Alex Trebek, right? Like I'm sure he's probably reflecting on a few things. And I think he's at a point in his career where he needs to step away. Like he needs to just retire and let someone else take over, because I feel like if this is happening now, it's only going to get worse as things go on.
Absolutely. It's not enough to say, oh, okay, he needs to go off the show, but it is going in that direction. It's just going. Yeah. I mean, how many more times can you get testy with contestants before the counterculture out there or the social media out there says, you know what, maybe we want to go ahead and see someone else in that spot. I think Pat Sajak, as someone who's responsible for a lot for the executive producing, I'm assuming, and all, I mean, he's got his name all over it. So if he decided to go ahead tomorrow and have someone else step in, or Vanna White step up to the plate as host, I think he's okay. I think he's good as far as monetarily. Maybe it's just the fact that he's at this age, he still wants to go ahead and be out there because of the challenge that it presents. But I think he needs to reassess how he treats his guests, his contestants. Sometimes they need to be put in their place. And I'll be the first one to say that. But to consistently do it would not be a good move on his part. It wouldn't be a good look.
Right. So, I mean, that was my next thing I was going to say, was that like it's best for him to step away right now instead of like having this continue, and then having hatred start building towards him, and have him go out not being remembered for how he was, but how he is now. And, I don't know if that's a conversation the network needs to have, or if that's like
because it's a syndicated show. So it's like a company that has to talk to him on that. So,
I mean, I don't know. It's a weird area for him, but I would hope that he is capable of like having this realization before he really kind of messes things up,
It reminds me a lot of Brett Musburger, who I've actually met on occasion, for some time back. He lives here in Las Vegas, and I wanted to go ahead and say he does games for the Raiders now, radio, but he was the man behind ABC, ESPN, doing a lot of their stuff, live stuff. But he started saying some controversial things and things of that nature that kind of sounds like an old man, maybe not saying the right things on television in 2018, 2019. So he got moved and kicked to the side and kicked to the curb by the major networks for that very reason. And it's that reason that possibly Pat Sajak might want to be, or might be, moved out or forced out if he continues down that road. So I'm hoping he'll either reassess what's going on and be a little bit nicer, more patient to these contestants on there. I'm going to say this. If it's a stand-up comedian, I think in those same type of situations, they'll probably say a joke to smooth things over, to maybe settle things down. He's not a stand-up comedian, so he approaches these contestants from a different way, and maybe that's the reason why it's coming across a little bit poorly amongst out there in the news and social media.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like he is not being the fun and lovable Wheel of Fortune host that everyone knows him as. He's just becoming the cranky old man.
Yeah,
and that's probably not a look that he wants, or a look that the network wants, because there's a difference between having a conversation that encourages somebody to step down, and then there's a conversation where somebody gets fired. So, I think that something needs to happen sooner rather than later, on the off chance that this starts to get really bad.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more on that. So let's hope that one thing or another happens in favor of the show, because I really do, like you, have an affinity for that show. I do have an affinity for Pat Sajak, and I think very fondly of him, and I want his legacy to be a positive one continuously going forward, even after he's done with the Wheel of Fortune. What are your thoughts out there on Pat Sajak's current tenure right now in the Wheel of Fortune, and do you think it might be best for him to step away or reassess how he treats contestants on the Wheel of Fortune? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. I really want to thank you so much for gutting it out. I'm sorry that you couldn't make Indie Pods United, but I'm really happy that you're here with me today. I'm hoping you will feel better so that you'll be back strong going forward next week, because we got to talk Cyberpunk 2077. I want to get more into depth with you as far as the Warner Brothers decision to go day and date on all the movies that are coming out in 2021. So I really want to get in depth with you on that. It's a great discussion there. And I also want to talk Mandalorian when you catch up with all the episodes.
Yes, I definitely want to talk about Mandalorian. I also watched New Mutants last night, so I got some thoughts on that are, there.
Absolutely.
Also, thank you everyone for bearing with me. I know my voice is like really bad today. Hoping it's just allergies, but if it gets worse, I'll have to probably go get a COVID test. But hey, I'm here. I'm feeling all right. So, thanks for hanging in there with me.
I hope so too, my friend. I hope you feel better, and I hope it's, like I said, nothing real serious, and that you'll be back strong, not only next week, but later on this month, because we've got the best of. We're going to go ahead and sit down and start mapping out. I already started mapping out with Marcus, so he's going to be appearing hopefully on both the shows coming up here later on this month when we start talking the best of, whether it's TV, movies, video games, what have you. So we'll be talking about that later this month, but I do want to go ahead and thank you for getting it out on today's show, The Pop Culture Cosmos. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.